Hey, so my name is Nate, and I love philosophy. I just started getting into philosophy, and I just kind of wanted to share some stuff that I've read. I've read a few different books and stuff. Um, so I've read selected works by Seneca, which is Seneca's writing. So Seneca, and then you have Epictetus, and then you have Marcus Aurelius, and they're all Stoic uh, philosophers. So they all preach Stoicism, which Stoicism is very deep and intruded into a lot of things. The thing with Stoicism, which is basically what I'm just going to talk about here, is that when you look up Stoicism and you learn about Stoicism, you're going to see like AI pictures of people with 8 packs giving, quotes of ethics of Stoicism. But Stoicism is so much more deeper than that. But not really going to focus on that. Probably just going to focus on the ethics because that's what people seem to care more about. Not saying that I would never talk about them, but these are like the three main Stoics that you can read. There's also some other people that you can read, and these are the three main like core that they wrote that they have read. And there's more people that you could read that have talked about Stoicism, but these are like the main three when people bring up Stoicism and learning about Stoicism and its philosophy. And I kind of wanted to go over the 3 books just super quick and simple. Nobody likes long videos. So we have Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This is probably the most popular one. You probably see people talk about this one more, Marcus Aurelius more than anything. I know they even mentioned it at Charlie Kirk's funeral. Really quick about Marcus Aurelius. He's such a popular figure and known very well. And people who don't know, he was a Roman emperor. Probably one of the best. Well, I wouldn't say one of the best. Well, he's one of the best Roman emperors that Rome has ever had. He's part of something called the 5 Good Emperors, right? And I think it was Machiavelli who kind of made that into principle, and he was the last of the good 5. Now, Marcus was an extraordinary person. I love Marcus Aurelius. I think he was a very great individual and a very cool individual. And he's also really well remembered because he was a Roman emperor. So you can see how when conflict comes in with Marcus, he uses Stoic principles for his whole duties, and he was a very good man. When you see politicians nowadays, or even just back then in general, they weren't the most credible people. They weren't the most people that you thought you could trust. But Marcus was somebody that you could trust. Now, Marcus's Meditations is about, it's basically just his journal. So he wrote this just for himself. This was not meant to be for anybody to see or to read. This was just for Marcus. But luckily someone was like, oh, I should probably keep this book so I can share with other people because it's so influential, which is good because it was. So he wrote this, I'm pretty sure in Greek when he wrote it, which was like a level for people that are higher up. Like, most people in the Roman Empire were pretty illiterate. They didn't really know how to read or write or anything like that. But if you did know how to read and write, that probably meant you had some status with you. But not only that, but writing it in Greek was cool. Just a little fun fact there. But Marcus was really interesting, and so he basically just goes over just to himself. He writes to himself. So he writes this when he's kind of older in his life, after he lost a bunch of his kids. He's in a war. There's a plague going on. This book I highly recommend if you want to get into Stoicism. It's a really good one. I wouldn't say it's the one I first recommend though, but it is a really good one, and I think it's a great book. It's the first one I ever read anything about philosophy, especially the core text. And it's such a beautiful book, and his writing is so easy to read. It's not hard. It's so short. This one's only 200 pages, if even. So I highly recommend this one. And so another one that I really love also is Selected Works by Seneca. So Seneca he was alive, what was it? I think it was after Marcus. He was alive after Marcus. None of these people knew each other, by the way. Well, maybe Epictetus and Seneca had something, but so Seneca was a rich dude, very rich, one of the richest people in Rome. And one of the most interesting things about him is that he was a tutor for Nero. So Nero was a Roman emperor, probably one of the worst. He did a lot of bad things, Nero. And I wouldn't say it's due to Seneca. I think there's a lot more involved for it. But he was like teaching Seneca how to become a Roman emperor. And Seneca was trying his best. But Seneca was interesting because he was a statesman and all that, so he was very high up on the art. Like, he was as high up, and he was really balling out. But he was kind of like not like a motivational speaker. I hate using that term, but he was kind of like a person that people go to for guidance. So that's why it's Seneca's letters, because we have his letters that he wrote to other individuals about how to deal with things. This person's going through something, how to deal with it. And back then, letters were not probably how they are nowadays. Letters were long, right? Because it took months at a time, so you want to make sure you say everything to the person. And so Seneca's letters are long. They're beautiful. I think they're really beautifully written. I remember I almost cried or shed a tear for some of it, because he was talking to this mother who was mourning the loss of her kids, and she was mourning the loss for her kid for such a long time, for like years. And Seneca, at the end of the letter, wrote something very beautiful, and it meant something to me for a lot of different reasons. But he teaches people the Stoic wisdom, and he teaches them how to be stoic, and it's just beautifully written. And I think he makes a lot of things. He has the very famous quote that probably everybody has heard, where it's like, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. And so Seneca was a really cool person. He ended up getting killed by Nero. He actually had to not sacrifice, but he had to kill himself, Seneca. Yeah, it's unfortunate story, but very interesting story. He was very interesting, but let me tell you, he's probably one of my favorite ones when reading the core text. I think his stuff is just beautifully written. I just think I like Seneca a lot also. Probably not as much as Marcus, but Seneca's really good, and I highly recommend that one. And then the big boy that I like to think is Epictetus. So Epictetus he has a very interesting story, right? So we started off with Marcus, who was a Roman emperor, and then we started off with Seneca, who was, a high statesman, very rich and wealthy. And then we start with Epictetus. So Epictetus was very interesting. He was a slave. So he started off as a slave to a very rich statesman, I forgot what his name was, who was during the time of Seneca. So there might have been a chance where Epictetus saw Seneca, but I doubt they talked, because Seneca's rich and powerful, and Epictetus was literally just a slave. And Epictetus was a slave. Eventually his master dies, so then he's able to go back to, I think, somewhere in Greece to start a school, because the next Roman emperor basically banned all philosophy, so he had to leave. And the nice thing about it is, when Epictetus was a slave, he got to learn about philosophy, right? He was, as fortunate as it sounds, since he was a slave, at least he had a rich person to be his master or whatever, so then he was able to read philosophy and be around those types of people, if that makes sense. And so he went to Greece and started teaching philosophy, and he started teaching Stoicism. Stoicism was really big. And this one, and like I said, this is a teacher, right? Epictetus was a teacher. So you can imagine that this one's longer, it's more in depth, and it really teaches the values of Stoicism, I think. I think this one's the best one if you really want to learn. This one for sure. Super beneficial. It really goes into detail about Stoicism and how to live it. It's really practical and really good. And also, if you don't want to read this whole thing, it's like 300 pages, I highly recommend the Enchiridion. So the Enchiridion comes with this, so you can get all in one. You get all of his teachings, and then you get the Enchiridion. So the Enchiridion is very small. It's like maybe 25 pages maybe, or something like that, if even, probably less. But the Enchiridion is really what he's mainly known for. He really preaches some amazing stuff in the Enchiridion, and I highly, highly recommend it. He talks about some great stuff. So you can get the Enchiridion. It's really cheap, small book, or you can just get the the big one, the Discourses by Epictetus. But his Enchiridion is super great and powerful. I mean, it goes into the realm of just the ethics of Stoicism. Stoicism is deep. There's physics involved and all this stuff with nature and all that. But the ethics, if you just want to know the ethics and just get your foot into Stoicism to learn about it, just like me, these 3 books are crucial for people, no doubt about it. But this one I really recommend if you really want to get into it. I recommend reading the Enchiridion. Just seeing if you like it. I think everybody will like it. Everybody can benefit from it. You cannot tell me not everybody can benefit from it. Now, and I'm also not saying that all Stoicism is perfect. or anything like that, but I think that it's really deep and enriched, and I think nowadays it's super beneficial for how high emotions are in people with anxiety, depression, all that, and I think it can really help people. All of Stoicism, I think it's super beneficial, and I hope that everybody can get a chance to read it. When it comes to philosophy, I remember somebody telling me, like, to get into philosophy, you should read the people that you like, and stuff like that. And Marcus was someone I liked, then took me to Seneca, and then took me to Epictetus, So all these three people, it all led me to them, and let me tell you, it changed my life. It changed the way that you view life. And I'm obviously reading other Stoicism. I just read Plato, Aristotle, so I'm really getting deep into it, but I highly recommend Stoicism. I think it's a great thing. I think another important thing to note also is that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult reading some of the core value books. Like Epictetus can be a little bit tricky to read. It was written thousands of years ago, so it can be a bit tricky. So I highly recommend, if you do want to get into it. Marcus's is easy to read. I feel like Seneca's is easy to read. Epictetus is a bit tricky though. His Enchiridion is easy, but like his discourses is a little bit tricky. Not saying you gotta be smart to read it. I'm fucking dumb as hell. But if you really want, you can pick up books that basically talk about Stoicism. One of my favorites, and it's leaned towards more Marcus, but it gives you the value of Stoicism, is How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. Beautiful book. I highly recommend it. Donald Robertson, highly recommend it. But these are really good books. They teach you about death, about ignoring external things. Living with virtue is like the best thing that you can do for yourself. And one of the biggest ones I love is, if there's nothing you can do about it, then don't worry about it. If it rains on the day that you want to go outside and play and you're sad, don't even cry about it. It's whatever. You can't control the scenario, so there's no point of dwelling upon it. But I highly recommend Stoicism. It's a great book. I don't want to make this video long, so check out the books, read them. Just get the Enchiridion, read it. If you like it, keep going. If you don't, that's alright. Philosophy is some of the best work ever made in the world by brilliant people, and I think it's a blessing that we have a chance to even read any of this. So please read it.